Indeed, here we are counting down the moments before we get to experience and see with our very two eyes, our very own two eyes. Your eyes may be different from mine, but we know that they are definitely there. As we move forward to the last of these matchups in this particular round on Canopy, my name is Aggro, that guy over there is Lecter. We are going in hard now.
And we saw a little bit of a split rollout. We saw a 2-2-1, and basically both teams did the same rollout where they had two people on the flank, two people in the main, and then one person on concrete.
And I've just seen Banana and Private and one other Soup member rolling in like some sort of elite team of champions. Although as soon as they move...
We already have a melee frag on the board, and it looks like Red does come out on top.
Yep, the team that was brilliantly moving in as one immediately split up as soon as the ground was encountered, like water hitting a stone. They scattered and died as individual steamy elements. But now, once again, another mid-fight. This entire Dunk team seems to be holding, doing the thing where they try and hold mid by holding onto mid, literally ganging themselves up, gunking themselves down, and it's working for them.
Yeah, there was a moment there as well where one of the blue team members managed to get behind and try to do a little bit of a flank play, but they found him out. They turned around and he evaporated in an instant. So they're doing a great job of coordinating and punishing the people that are the people on blue team that are going in one by one.
I think a little bit of the Pyro sensibility of constantly looking out for a spy seems to be getting into them, and they're finally realizing that actually nobody is going to be appearing out of nowhere, and actually they can rely on their eyeballs. Finally, unfortunately, Grip seems to be outnumbered by about 1 billion to 1.
Oh, one just got launched into the skybox. That was amazing.
They're walking in the air. They're walking in the midnight sky. And finally, Soup find themselves with an opportunity to capture this point out. They've got 300 points at the moment. There's nobody contesting it. And of course, why would there ever be, although they have finally managed to do the inevitable and capture the point for themselves. Frylock going out of their way to provide some sort of positioning.
He was very aggressive there, trying to get something going in the spawn, but it didn't seem to work out for him there.
Although, having said that, maybe there was just a tricky way of leading the team, expecting the team to follow in as a big chunk, and they've separated out, and in doing so managed to find themselves in a bad situation. Kiddo left out on their own versus a Private Man who is trying to do a flank, although finds himself flanking against himself.
Yeah, he does get taken out in a 3 or 4v1 right there. That's kind of what you expect when you're so far deep alone with no teammates to support you. You kind of expect that they'll group up and they're just gonna take you out.
Oh my goodness me, that was a 1v1 negativity versus Private Man. They traded. They traded the kill and the death, and I think that much more so than any team we've seen so far, these two teams seem to be fairly well balanced.
Yeah, this is looking like a good back and forth. The red team got basically half the timer run down, but then after the blue cap, they haven't really been able to set a foot on the point yet. So it's definitely looking like a good back and forth.
Yeah, Grip managing to hang out long enough to pick himself a good health pack up again. Again, split themselves up into two little teams. It's only really when a team with a player gets themselves separated that things turn negative for either one of these two teams. Frylock is now the sole purveyor of death and does not survive for very long. Frylock and I'm a stupid idiot has definitely proved the value of their name in going in on against 4 team members. A forward hold not quite as aggressive as we've seen in other rounds, but Dunk definitely being aggressive as much as they possibly can get away with. Here come the power of Soup though, and Soup is not to be squandered. Although Frylock left alone far too much, does seem to find the warm end of a flame and goes down for their trouble.
There's a very scattered fight with players getting behind on either side, red players on blue side, blue players on red side, and a fight on point. It's a very chaotic moment.
this speaks to me of a lack of communication, a lack of stability. The blue players, once they have captured a point, once they've formed themselves up as a group, rather than splitting into smaller groups, they split into the smallest possible group of one and go off in 5 separate directions, which is just not the strat for this gameplay at all. Even now, we're seeing 4 team players gang up against one poor little soup, and the soup, I think, is getting burnt. Somebody has left the gas on too long, and all of the power of the soup has been evaporated.
Yeah, this is actually the closest match so far. Both the timers getting below 1 minute in the first round already. Like, we're seeing a very intense game here. Some red players chasing the blue player into the corner. Gonna get cleaned up here, most likely. No, he actually manages to get out. He's so slippery.
He picks up a health pack around the corner, and that is enough to put him in a very good position. Now, again, we're seeing a little bit of the gas coming out. The gas parser coming out and blocking off that entranceway, that exit way, long enough in order to force the enemy team to go in a different path. All on the mid now. We're seeing the time come down, and the announcer is declaring that only a few minutes or a few seconds left, and that is enough to force teams' hands. Warrior, oh my goodness me, Banana Warrior just being
the red team
cornered.
capping this, and they have a big player advantage, so it's going to be very difficult for the blue team to push in. As a matter of fact, the last player didn't even attempt to touch the point. No, it was a done deal. It was a first round for the red team.
The writing was on the wall. There was no opportunity there to force the entirety of the team off. Pat knew that that's what they had to do. They had to stand back and allow the team to capture their points. Now we see ourselves rolling out for a second time, not for this map, but certainly for this match. The entirety of both teams seem to be descending on midpoint as we speak. Banana Warrior left out on the
2 players behind, but that typically means that you're leaving the rest of your team to fight at a disadvantage. So, but it did seem to sort of work out. It's still a very balanced moment, but I think the red team could be taking 2v1s here to turn this back into their favor. As a matter of fact, they did, but they do end up getting cleaned up by the 2 players that were behind.
Interestingly, the point hasn't been captured by either team, so nobody has a disadvantage in terms of spawns. I think they're relying on that option of really just forcing their team members to be available. Super Pat on the point at the moment, though, almost managed to get it fully captured to their side, which is quite interesting considering the entirety of their team, including themselves right now, is down for the count. Privateer Man going out, choosing this opportunity to go out on their own versus the entirety of Dunk, surviving for a few moments, incredulously, inexplicably long enough to
just get cleaned up at the tail end of that mid fight. I must say that is a very long mid fight and a very chaotic and a very strange one with lots of weird flying plays and people getting cleaned up behind and little 1v1s and little 2v1s. Like, that was probably one of the weirdest mid fights we've seen so far.
Absolutely. As we've seen before, it only takes a few sort of corners to get yourself in a bad position from a previously good one. Chasing players or backing up is the strat, certainly, for this. Get a few bits of damage in and then back up when you find yourself out of numbers until you're able to get back in again. See Grip doing that exact motion, getting them a lot of damage down and then relocating to find themselves in a good position again and coming back in and taking Frylock down. Now the point has finally captured for blue. They lost a minute or close to a minute. Is that going to be enough to be in their advantage? Well, it's going to cause Frylock, who is waiting to spawn at the moment, to have a very long spawn time. So it's 4 versus 5 for a little while, but perhaps it's going to go out the wrong way for them. Even while I was thinking about it, it wasn't working in the right way for them.
Actually, I think we just saw mutually 2 players both dying to the gas faster afterburn of like either team. It's very interesting to see 2 stock flamethrower kill feed icons in the same little moment. You don't really see that a lot in the format because that obviously means that they died to the gas passer, and then that happening to both teams, like, that was a very strange little situation there. A lot of weird things happening in this match, I must say, but it is also a very close match. Probably the closest one so far.
Indeed, I mean, 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes for both teams on the clock, sort of winding down from, which is, as you say, as close as I think we've ever seen this. I'm wondering now. Soup knows that they've got to get in. They've got to get this point. They've got to win this map, otherwise they're out. So I'm wondering whether the urgency is with them, and if that's affecting their gameplay at the moment. It's certainly causing them to be a little bit more aggressive than Dunk is purporting to be, but it does not necessarily work to their disadvantage. Certainly with regards to when the point is yours, your own respawns are much slower, and that is something that maybe they are relying on at the moment, where it looks like the entirety of Soup is up at the moment. They have the points, or at least they're about to have the points. Yep, there it goes. But almost immediately things turn around.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, we saw Grip going behind and sort of taking like this 1v3, and then the respawners for Red managing to use that to their advantage and get the one guy that was still standing on point with a player ad. So there's kind of a distraction play with one going behind, but at the end of it, it seems like the Red still doesn't manage to get the cap going. So it stays a very close round.
Absolutely. Now there's a surge of these Dunk players moving forward onto the point itself, trying to force some sort of a change into effect. And again, seems to be super effective for them. I'm Stupid Idiots getting a lot of airtime in that particular pass. But they are now pushing out again against the point. They're doing the thing. They're doing the strats where they're waiting for their teammates to spawn. Unfortunately, they're on the wrong side of the map. They are out on their own, waiting for their teammates to spawn.
Yeah, they're kind of just waiting to get sandwiched right here, but they don't they actually manage to slip out again. There's some very slippery players on the blue team.
Super slippery. Speaking of slippery players, they've managed to capture the point back for themselves again. The clock is very much definitely ticking down in their favor, and at the same time they are holding so far forward. Although in a sort of split focus, Frylock finds himself out on their own, Privateer Man out on their own, being chased by a single player, backs up onto what he hoped would be a perfect moment of capturing that health, but unfortunately was gunned down in that one moment, or fired down in that one moment. I'm not sure of the right phrasing.
It's actually pretty much the moment where the timers are equalized. We see Red really making a stance on the point again, so it just underlines just how close this matchup has been so far.
Indeed, and I don't think it's fair to say that it's entirely 50-50, since obviously one team is going to have a slight priority, but otherwise we would never see an end to it. In my mind at least, Dunk seems to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more coordinated, and a little bit more willing to wait for team members in order to make a good play. And we're certainly seeing a lot of play happening on the point at the moment. Pat moving in along with Frylock, going up against this unfortunate Napoleon, and Dunk negativity, trying to make some sort of play for themselves, gets taken out. Grip out on their own, trying to do something very special, isn't able to make any kind of massive effort. 6 seconds left, and finally the cap goes again the way of Soup. Soup is finding themselves in a great position, holding out, although there's a sneaky Pyro out on their own, hanging out in the background area of the blue spawn, waiting for the right moment to descend upon them. And now they move in, now they're able to take some effect, and it doesn't work out for them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't a good try. Clock is absolutely winding down at the moment. I don't think it's going to go easily in either direction, but finally Soup manages to make the plays, manages to make the time, manages to get the clock going in their favor, and finally Soup is proving their worth against Dunk. It is now 1 point to 1 point. It is all to play for in a way that we have not seen so far. Neither one of these teams absolutely dominating against the other. It is finally the point of points. This is what we've all been hoping for. This is the kind of gameplay we've been hoping to see, where so much of the effort is dependent on individuals making the mind to play together as teams.
Yeah, it was a very tense end of the round, and it's only going to get more tense for both of these teams here as they duke it out for this last round. There were some fights there at the end of last round where the red team was finding the damage, but they weren't able to clean up the kills, and so they ended up losing because they would just drop their own players and then not manage to follow up the damage that they had. So it was a very winnable situation, even for red there in the end. Like those final fights were. Yeah, it could have still gone any way. Like it's insane. Absolutely. Just how close this matchup is.
Well, indeed, we saw from the point of capturing the entirety of Dunk moving around the back area, trying to make some sort of a forward play attack. Not in time, though, to do any real effective maneuver. Although, I think what we're seeing at the moment is it's almost a passive Dunk attack defense where they're trying desperately not to be held out and not to be sort of captured or kept in the death scene for too long. But Soup is making a move not just on mid, but also on the joy of attacking and being a dominant force. Pat is. I was going to say Pat was going to get an amazing kill there, but they didn't. They did an amazing running away. Not quite the same.
Yeah, this has actually been a very interesting. The red team is actually doing a very good job at holding on to the point here. There were some moments where it looked like blue was just gonna waltz in with their player advantage and then take over the point, but red manages to clean up the frags where they needed to and you know keep the players alive where they needed to. They're still holding on to this point. It's almost been a minute and a half. That's half the timer is down before the blue team was able to cap.
Well, Soup finally managing to capture the point themselves, and they find themselves a man down as the entirety of Dunk moves together as one great big snake, one dragon, one fire-breathing dragon, out into the poor, defenseless eye sockets of Soup as they force their way in, and yet Soup is coming out as a dominant force. Who would have thought? Soup seems to be superior to the snaky power of Dunk. That does not compute in my mind. Speaking of which, Kibbo is just taken, just demolished, both on the back and the front. So much fire going into that one poor Pyro that you've got to feel for their tailor.
Yeah, the blue team on a bit of a forward hole here. Not too aggressive though, kind of backing out, letting the red team walk up grass, letting them take the space. So that I think that's a mistake here. Like they just let red basically onto the point without much friction at all. Absolutely. They even dropped the player while doing that. 2 players now actually, and now the red team can just slowly work away at this cap and get it. They did drop 1 player, so they'll have the worst respawn there, as blue team has 5 players up to them in the respawn, basically rolling out to point now.
I think there's the mistake as well with the players that there's a desire to get on point and start capturing, even when they don't have the numbers to capture, and it leaves them in a position where they've identified to the enemy team exactly where they are, and not only exactly where they are, but exactly how many players they are at that point. As soon as you see a 1x on the point, you know there's only going to be 1 Pyro there. So you have a chance to get back in and get some opportunities to kill a Pyro. And who doesn't want to take that opportunity? Dunk, once again, with the capture being on their side, they find themselves with only 45 seconds to go before they can take this whole thing for themselves, and yet it's not necessarily all going to go their way. I'm seeing a little bit of Privateer Man trying desperately hard to do well. Pat, out on their own, fighting the good battle of 1 versus 3 Pyros. How is that ever going to work out for them? And yet somehow it does. Somehow Froylock comes in, Banana Warrior comes in, and I'm dumb.
The I am dumb stupid idiot. They went and they got behind during that fight, and then at the tail end of that fight manages to come in and get some damage in. So they're making good use of the pincers, that's for sure. But now they're the only one left, and they do end up getting 2v1. So I have to wonder how good going behind actually was working out for them.
Pat, once again, the last Pyro standing on blue team. Soup is not going to do it. They're not going to be able to defend this point. And
the air blast coming out at the end of the round, they're very, very solid, just rounding it up, making it so that they cannot get any overtime. It's a very clean end to the match there. It could have it was a very close one, but in the end, the red team, they pulled it together. They put down a very, very strong performance.
Indeed, they did. I think what we can definitely say from that was that the the players really had a strong and bold opportunity to make a stance, to hold themselves and hold their heads high. I don't think anyone performed necessarily badly, and we'll certainly see from the logs themselves as those come up on screen eventually. But I don't think either one of these teams can say, or any one of these players can say, I didn't do my part. But there were definitely key players that had more effect and more deliberate impact on the outcome. But any one of those players could have been on the winning team, and it was really just a case of inching their way, almost minuscule movements that made them just a little bit better, play just a little bit more conservatively, holding on to the health when they had no opportunity to win, pulling back and then waiting for their team to spawn and then moving out as a team, doing all of the things that Pyros need to do, certainly within this format, in order to win. Those were actions performed by a lot of players on both teams, and it was just a case that Dunk marginally managed to beat out Soup. It got the closest we've seen so far in terms of two teams being perfectly matched. Maybe that was Dunk holding back their superiority, waiting, as you say, with those super strats that we're going to see. We're going to have to wait until the grand finals for them to see if they managed to get there. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe these two teams were just perfectly matched, and this is the finest we're ever going to see of this particular format. I don't think so. I think there's a lot more to be seen, but